Hello, my name is Ana Teixeira de Melo. I come from the Center for Social Studies of the University of Coimbra, and this presentation is co-authored with Leo Caves. And we come to talk to you about an experience of outreach and complexity studies that we think have the potential for transforming not just our scientific, but also our everyday modes of thinking. And we're going to talk to you about our experience with the Complex Thinking Academy. So in the context for this presentation is pretty much the context of the development of our modes of thinking. And we know that the history of science is as much influenced by the evolution of human cultures and their intrinsic philosophies and mode of thinking as it has contributed to shaping them. And complexity studies have really paved the way for the development of new modes of thinking and for doing science that have significant implications in terms of how we conduct interventions in the real world with different types of complex systems. But complexity studies, and here I'm including the sciences and also the philosophies of complexity, have an important role to play, not only in shaping these new modes of scientific exploration and thinking and of managing the complexity of the world, but also in somehow shaping our everyday modes of thinking and our ways of being and thinking together as part of the complexity of the world. And we believe that there is scope for the development of educational interventions based in a complexity framework and informed by a complexity framework that aim to promote these deeper transformations in our worldviews and our modes of thinking and being together that could really affect the way we are in our local communities, in our everyday lives. So we're going to talk to you about our experience with the Complex Thinking Academy, which was originally an extension and a scientific extension and disseminating project that has been moving towards more of a transformational educational project. So the Complex Thinking Academy, that I just said, it was initially set up as an extension and scientific dissemination activity of the Building Foundations for Complex Thinking project. I will leave the link in a while. And the aims were to disseminate and to communicate key concepts of a paradigm of complexity and to raise awareness of the implications, the consequences, and the effects of adopting more or less complex modes of thinking in looking at a variety of different real-world problems or objectives of change. And these aims have been evolving from raising awareness to promoting modes of thinking that are congruent with the organizing principles of complexity and of relatively more complex systems, and to increase the complexity of the thinking as it is practiced in different levels and different contexts of organization, both of science and society. So the Complex Thinking Academies have a very pragmatic focus, exploring what the practice of more complex modes of thinking, what that might entail, and what are its implications. So it started the Complex Thinking Academy was originally implemented as a set of pilot workshops that have been running since 2018 and have taken place in the UK and in Portugal with both English and Portuguese, with different types of groups. And we worked with adults from general population and just the community, but also with interdisciplinary groups of academics, and more recently adapted for school context and working with secondary school students. So the format of the Complex Thinking Academy is a workshop that can be done in presence, and since 2020 it started to take place online too within a particular format. And it has been evolving to different types of formats. So it started with the basic 3 to 4 hour introductory workshop focused on raising awareness. And we've been working toward developing more advanced complex thinking academies that imply several sessions and work not just with hypothetical scenarios, but move towards scenarios close to people that they can relate with. And more recently, we're aiming to work towards more tailored complex thinking academies targeting more specialized and specific contexts, where we can also focus on the development, implementation, and evaluation of a variety of tools and strategies to support the complexity of the thinking in science, in governments, in policy-making contexts, but also contexts for interventions with social systems, society at large, and everyday life. So we started our first Complex Thinking Academy workshops with, as I said, with the general population in the context of scientific dissemination initiatives, such as the York Festival of Ideas in 2018. You can see some images of our setups, of our contexts, and some of the materials that we use in these sessions. And from working, so this is again another community context. And we've been evolving, as I said, to more school context. So I'll be talking a little bit about these tools in a while, but you can see that it's a highly interactive with activity with materials to manipulate that will help shape our thinking through the process. So this is a bit one of the layouts of our online complex thinking academies. We see that we normally create a shared context in Zoom for us to share the videos, but then there's a platform where we have different rooms for different types of activities, from the briefing room, the evaluation lab, the information center, the thinking lab, and a series of other activities to warm up the groups. So this is, again, another snapshot of our online complex thinking academy, another digital version of those tools that you saw in the previous photos. So I'm going to give you just a very, very, very brief overview of the structure and dynamics of the sessions. And we work with a role-playing scenario, and that is presented to the participants initially as this. So we set up our scenario in the year of 2118, and we say that the participants have been transported to the headquarters of the Complex Thinking Academy, located in a space station that's positioned between Earth and Complexity. And Complexity is a colony in space that was conceived in 2068 to deliver a dream, to build and shape a place where humanity could flourish. It was designed as a laboratory, a place where, with a fresh start, humankind could rehearse new modes of thinking, new modes of being, and managing the world to live in peace and harmony with each other and with other species. So we say that the dream was to build conditions for this continuous learning and to achieve great outcomes, but also to prepare ourselves to meet new worlds, to elevate human existence, as well as to deliver some solutions to Earth where a significant crisis was installed. So the best of the best minds were transported to Complexity, and 50 years have passed, but something went wrong, because Complexity is now facing many of the issues that Earth was facing many years before. So the best efforts right now are focused on finding new solutions, and the previous generation has realized that they've made mistakes, and that despite their expertise, their thinking was clearly not complex enough to deal with the complexity of both worlds, both on Earth and in space. And so participants are recruited as Complex Thinking Academy cadets to be trained as more complex thinkers, and their mission, should they choose to accept it, is to stretch their minds and to experiment some tools to promote the complexity of our thinking and to explore their potential. So this is our basic setting. The workshops are designed to be isomorphic in process terms, with key principles that we aim to highlight and to present to participants in terms of complexity, and isomorphic with the practice of key organizing dimensions of the complexity of the thinking according to a particular framework for the practice of complex thinking. It is a very engaging and experiential methodology where participants are invited to actively enter in this role-playing scenario in this setup colony in space, and they're invited to reflect on the problems that we present to them, to reflect on the features of complexity that there are expressed in that scenario, and where actions went wrong and when the thinking went wrong. But also then, so we kind of like test them for the complexity of their thinking in the evaluation lab, and then they go through a brief training section where we introduce them to some complexity concepts, and then we propose a training session where they use two tools, the relatoroscopes and the observatrons, that were designed to support the practice of some key properties of the structural, but also a bit of the dynamic complexity of the thinking. So we give them a scenario. There are materials to explore, like with the plants of our city and their transformation. We give them a briefing report that describes in detail what is happening in our city, and the scenario allows us to explore different expressions of complexity in a variety of domains, like the ones we deal here on Earth, from the environment to social welfare to health to economy, but above all, the relation between these different dimensions is very clear in the construction of the scenario. So you can access the scenario. It is available with a Creative Commons license, and it can be used in similar contexts. And we use these tools, the relatoroscope of the observatron, that allow participants to experiment a variety of thinking movements by physically manipulating the information and exploring that information from a variety of perspectives, that allows them to somehow enact some of the principles that organize complex systems, and to experience at the level of their thinking some level of emergence, some degree of novelty and abduction, the emergence of new explanations or new solutions that wasn't visible when we analyze each piece of information per se. So these are some of the properties of the complexity of the thinking that these tools can rehearse. Of course, in our basic workshops, we only give slight hint about what this might be like. Participants can't really express the full implications of these tools, but it allows them to get a bit of an idea. And our preliminary evaluations, the feedback that we had are quite impressive. Not just people experienced some surprise, they felt mind blown, but above all, they feel that they can see the difference that these modes of thinking can make in their everyday life. And a lot of the feedback, both from adults and from teenagers, really says this. They can see how they can use these kind of strategies in their everyday life, in their professional life, in their personal lives, and the benefits of that. Some of the feedback from the students and the teenagers clearly highlight the interactivity of the strategies and how fun it can be, but also how it helps them to think differently of how they make decisions. And it points towards a change in their perspectives and how they see the world, and also to how they're capable of exploring and understanding the relations between these different components of our world. So we can also see how these sessions clearly introduce some level of perturbation in their modes of thinking. People experience confusion in the beginning of the session, some discomfort with feeling confronted with something that is new, but they say how they clearly feel that their minds are opening, how they feel a willingness to discover more and to know more about the ways that they think, and feeling the benefits of opening their minds, as some of the participants have reported. So there clearly, what this preliminary evaluation shows is that there's clearly a potential in what we initially conceived as just an extension and scientific dissemination of activity to transform it into a device to promote some sort of transformational learning, and a deeper transformation in people's modes of thinking that might have an impact in their way of being and acting in relation to the others in the world and their challenges. So to some extent, these can become tools to promote changes in our modes of thinking in our everyday lives, and then also in more specialized academic, but also real world and intervention practitioners contexts. So we're working on developing the Complex Thinking Academy to tailor the workshop for different types of context, groups, and ages, to do a sort of developmental evaluation in this process, but also to evaluate its processes and outcomes, not just in terms of participants' experiences and their transformation, but the short and long-term effects at the level of the organization of their thinking. And we're looking to explore applications of the use of these academies when coupled with more community-focused interventions that target really complex problems like participatory democracy interventions, for example. And the challenges are to develop outcome measures so we can really understand the changes in terms of the complexity of the thinking that we see in terms of outcomes. And we're hoping in the more advanced forms of the Complex Thinking Academies, it might imply different types of workshops and targeting academics, but also policymakers and practitioners, to couple the Complex Thinking Academies with the development of the tools and strategies to promote the complexity of the thinking that we've been working on, namely in the context of the Building Foundations for Complex Thinking. And you have the link here for our website. And this is the team. You can see that we dress up for these interventions, and we would be very happy if you get in touch and we can explain more of the work that we're doing and more of the work that we aim to be doing, and how you might be a part of it. Thank you.